Tyson wondered again. The real name sounds good, Ma Dong-jun replied. I don't feel anything. Ray Hyuk gives me a stronger feeling, because idols are idols, their names also have to be great. On one side, there was a group of girls looking at him and talking. He didn't apply for a singer job. Phew, so lucky. Why are you so handsome? To raise him as an idol, he's too tall, probably an actor. That beauty must be the main character in the group. Hearing the comments, Tyson turned around and smiled in return. His smile made the girls there fascinated. Kia, so handsome, how can a man's skin be so beautiful? The comments kept increasing. What is he, a trainee? Maybe he's an actor, he's so handsome. Tyson smiled excitedly and thought, somehow I feel like today will be a very interesting day. On a beautiful day, Tyson went to the company and went back to work. He went inside, to room number 501. Tyson opened the door and calmly walked into the room. He briefly observed the room and then exclaimed, looking at it, he knew it had cost a lot of money. It was a rather luxurious room. And clean, he thought, without a speck of dust. Just looking at him, he looked like an entertainment director. When an employee inside the room saw him, he bowed and said, Director, please come in. That person happily asked after Tyson. The director had already gone to work. Tyson also happily said, it seems like there were a lot of people coming for the interview, huh? He evaluated the documents and asked, are these all the people who were recruited? The other person answered, yes, Director, I have recruited people who the director has approved as official employees of the departments, like human resources, operations, advertising. There are a total of 80 people. Hearing that, Tyson was quite satisfied and said seriously, as I said, there is no abuse of power at MTS, and even if you are an artist under the company, you will not receive special treatment. Just remember this, he clearly advised. The other person was also confident in himself and assured, yes, please don't worry, Director, we absolutely will not go against the director's instructions. Tyson added that investors were preparing to invest heavily in this field. This statement made the other person panic. What, there were investors too? Tyson saw the worried expression of his staff and firmly said, I think they will support us with all their strength, so we just need to improve our strength. To take the lead in the cultural industry, we must grasp and thoroughly meet the needs of consumers. That employee also felt helpless and exclaimed that, indeed, he could only be the director. The more he talked, the more excited he became. Then Tyson asked if he had contacted the lecturers yet. The other person spoke quickly and softly said, okay, I've already contacted the native teachers of English, Chinese, and Japanese. The interns probably want to faint when they hear this sentence, but there's a thing. The confused employee asked, how could the director think like that towards children at that age? Is it okay to put everything on the children like that, haha? Tyson with an expectant expression without any hesitation at all explained that in the Taoist scriptures there is a sentence like this. The reason God gives people wealth is not so they can monopolize it, on the contrary, God wants to create a balance of benefits for those who do not have wealth, he said. The manager also didn't expect Tyson to be so young, thinking so deeply and then exclaiming, as expected, thinking has nothing to do with age, I admire the director very much. Because of this sincere respect from the employee, Tyson was given karma points. In his mind he was thinking, karma points, it's like a real level up game. It seems like when he receives recognition, sincere respect from others will give you more karma points. Suddenly the screams, look at this. Yes and this can't be done, interrupted the two of them's conversation. The employee looked at Tyson's face in fear, is it yes and? The sounds of arguing echoed into the room. The representative made an appointment with us but was in such a hurry, that's why I did that. Please let us see Huang for a moment, I hope you can help. This loud shouting has caught Tyson's attention. He asked the department manager, what's going on? Then the person explained that. People outside, I'm a new actor under lure, but it seems like I've been a bit tired lately. When I was a trainee I trained her, that was Kang Yeseo, he said hesitantly. Tyson panicked when he heard that. What's wrong? The person outside called loudly to come inside. The department head is me, the department manager. Tyson didn't expect it and thought to himself, Kang Yeseo, I also know this actress, I'm also her fan. Having said that, Tyson told manager Huang to let her in. The manager immediately confusedly explained. That's not okay, we have been warned not to contact people from lure company. If they are involved, as for the actresses in the company, both sides will be in trouble. Hearing that, Tyson was not afraid of heaven or earth and immediately said, why are you afraid, making the manager even more confused. Tyson immediately said firmly, don't be afraid, I have bodyguards and I also have a relationship with Sanwa law firm, so don't worry. Director, the manager was still a little worried and said, Tyson then said, please come in. The sound of high heels clicking, the girl opened the door and rushed straight into the room. Somehow, she mistook Tyson for Manager Huang, ran to hug him, and happily said loudly, Manager Huang. It was this rude action of the girl that made him confused. A girl crying in his arms. He had never encountered this situation before. And in his heart he could not contain his joy. In his mind, he was exclaiming, oh my God. What a wonderful moment this was. Suddenly, Manager Huang spoke up, this director is Yesio, and before he could enjoy it for long, she knew she recognized the wrong person. Yesio was startled away from Tyson, oh my god. Tyson liked it very much but was a little embarrassed and asked, are you done crying? The girl knew she hugged the wrong person and immediately panicked, what, this pervert, who are you? Manager Huang immediately introduced her to Tyson, this is the director of our company, and Tyson also greeted her. After a while, everyone finished introducing themselves and sat at the table to talk. At this time, Yesio could no longer speak forcefully and instead sat down and apologized, I'm sorry. Department head, other than the department head, I have no one else to rely on. Seeing that the girl was embarrassed, the manager immediately said, the director is also my relative. So feel free to say anything, Yesio thought to himself, even though it's uncomfortable. It's okay. Tyson also happily said, just say it, you have to listen to know if I can help. The girl was upset and told the company representative. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to go to Bali to take photos for a magazine, Mr. Huang suddenly asked. What about the magazine? But what's the problem with that? Hearing that, Tyson was a little interested. Yesio continued crying while continuing, the thing is that I don't have a manager with me. Both Tyson and the department had heard that and were panicked and said in unison. Did you come to Bali alone? Because I didn't want to, I refused, but he told me to leave while he was still talking nicely, someone promised to sponsor me. But if I do anything wrong, I will be buried alive, what should I do now, this is going too far. When hearing this difficult story, Tyson thought to himself, how urgent must it be to find head of department Huang representing the rival company, in the entertainment world, everyone wants to become famous, but if you directly engage in it, you will see that it is even more terrifying. Tyson thought about it and asked, what are you planning to do now? The girl was just so busy crying that she hadn't thought about this and asked again, yes. Tyson said seriously, do you really want to get out of Lure Company? The surprised girl temporarily froze and couldn't say anything. As for Manager Huang, he was also helpless and didn't say a word. Then Yesio firmly said, yes director, please save me, I really want to escape from there. Tyson seemed to have something in mind and agreed, okay, then let me help you, will you trust me? Because he was a fan. He knew all the basic information about her, so he asked, do her parents live in America? Yesio panicked when he heard the question, yes, but how did he do it, no again. Tyson seemed to know the answer in advance and then asked if the company had bought her a house yet. Yesio immediately replied to Tyson that I was staying at the company's dormitory. Then Tyson continued, you can find a staff member to bring your luggage to you. Having said that, Tyson immediately took out his phone and dialed his dad to call someone. On the other end of the line was Manager Han. He answered the phone and asked, what's going on, manager? Tyson then replied, Manager Han, I want to use MTS's bodyguards to protect someone. Tyson further advised, since the person needing protection is female, it is okay to send 2 male and 2 female bodyguards. I know, I will send them right away, he replied. After speaking, he was relieved and hung up the phone. Then Tyson asked Yesin, wondering if she brought things like documents, evidence or something with her. She hesitantly replied, I have a recording file on my phone. Quickly and decisively, Tyson immediately picked up the phone and dialed another phone call and said, okay. On the other end of the phone, before he could even say hello, he immediately suggested, lawyer, I have a lawsuit I want to ask you for help with, the lawyer asked clearly. What kind of lawsuit it is? Tyson explained that it was a lawsuit to terminate the exclusive contract of an actress who was threatened by the director. The lawyer seemed to find it interesting and said, so what, I know, I will prepare a suitable lawyer, relevant to this case. He further requested that please send a quiet lawyer here, I am now at MTS company. Then the person on the other end of the line agreed and the 2 people on this side were also frightened when they heard that. After making the phone call, Tyson then turned to ask Manager Huang, Manager Huang, the security here is very good, right, Mr. Huang immediately confirmed, of course, there were 8 guards sent here. Receiving a satisfactory answer, Tyson immediately said to Yesin, did you hear that, Kang Yesio, this is a safe place, the girl immediately confusedly replied, yes director. But at this moment her tears from fear became tears of joy. Tyson also advised that, and there is a dormitory in the company building, you should stay here temporarily for a while, the security headquarters is right here so except for the police station. This is a safe place, best. And the termination of her exclusive contract will be handled perfectly. He said happily. Makes Yesin feel somewhat more secure. She felt like she was getting justice for herself, then stood up and bowed in thanks. I will trust the director to the fullest, because of this thank you from the bottom of my heart. Tyson received extra karma points. After that, in the company lobby, many artists and journalists arrived. A girl with small steps walked in. She leisurely walked and looked around and exclaimed, there were so many journalists. When she looked at the handsome guy named Tyson, she thought to herself, is that person an intern from our company? So handsome. A pair of feet clattered along the hallway. As she walked, she said, her friends have gone to interviews. What should I do? I'm so bored. Goon kept walking back and forth in the middle of the hallway, thinking, what can a little girl like me do? Suddenly there was a man's voice calling, Miss Goon. She was startled and turned around to see who it was. How could she know her name? That man walked up to Goon and began to introduce himself. Hello, I am Yunjin Shu, assistant in the planning department of this company. After hearing the introduction, Goon was quite surprised. Assistant to the planning department. The friendly man continued, the director wants to meet you. Can you spare some time? When Goon heard this, his eyes widened and his mouth opened as if he couldn't believe his ears. Director, why did that person meet me? She exclaimed while thinking to herself, what the heck? This grandfather's face looks like a pervert. The planning department assistant acted like nothing happened, leisurely saying that her friend was still interviewing so she didn't need to worry. Goon was surprised again. Huh, what is that? Why did you say that to me? Looking at the surprised look on the manager's face, he had to laugh. Haha, we won't eat you, let's go. Goon doesn't understand what's going on. Entering the director's room, Goon was engrossed in looking around. The manager reported directly, the director, I brought her there. The director was quite satisfied when he heard that and said, come in, Miss Kangrun. Goon was confused, didn't pay attention to who was in front of him, bowed to introduce, hello, I'm Kangrun. A second later, she raised her head. Suddenly opened her eyes wide and looked forward as if she discovered something very horrifying. Oh, this man. Jang Tyson continued, wondering if she intended to become a celebrity. Seeing the person in front of her, Goon couldn't keep calm and sweat poured down like rain. 9 years from now, Goon will star in the famous movie Goblin Bride. She will sign an exclusive 10-year contract for 100 million. From inside the house suddenly came a voice, brother, what's going on? Kanye So, who later became very famous, I was also her fan, he asked the person opposite him if it was delicious. It seems that for men, wealth is women. A mouth eats chocolate while talking and chewing sprinkles, if there are too many words. The mouth will hurt, it's too wonderful. It turned out that it was Vladimir, he happily asked while eating, brother, is there really anything wrong? His face turned red like a drunk who drank 3 or 4 bottles of vodka. After hearing this, Jang Tyson shouted like a thorn in his body, what, are you saying I'm drunk? The two cousins sat on an outdoor chair talking. The older brother said, I went to an interview today, although the younger brother listened. He still held 2 chocolate bars in both hands and said, wow, really, you're so cool. The more Vladimir spoke, the more excited he became, his eyes lit up and he smiled. I really like a rich brother. After hearing this, he looked at his brother blankly, not liking his karma. The younger brother smiled innocently and patted his brother's shoulder. Hee, it's the same, you have to have money to earn a lot of karma points. The older brother chuckled and thought, he's quite smart, he said, I know, it's the same. Suddenly Jang Tyson became serious, he asked, I want you this. My brother still didn't know what was going on and innocently asked, what's going on? Jang Tyson's face became thoughtful. He said he was one of the geniuses, he could hack any computer, right? I see that in addition to America's NASA, the talent from the intelligence department is not average. He looked at his younger brother, even though he was a boy with a natural talent for hackers, he didn't know everything. The younger brother looked at his brother thoughtfully. Vladimir replied bewilderedly and awkwardly, that was a professional secret. He continued, if you want to learn, you have to spend a lot of time with me. It's not easy. Jang Tyson didn't mind anything, he was just afraid of not being able to study so he replied, I'm free, don't worry. The younger brother suddenly calmed down, his face also became sad and said, I have had a dream since I was a child. After listening, my brother's eyes widened in surprise, the younger brother continued. That's why he hacked Mr. Putin's account. After hearing this, Jang Tyson awkwardly asked. So, what is your dream? It seemed like Vladimir didn't want to talk, being the person who made him like him became curious, he tried to ask questions, try saying it, he would listen. Hurry up, you're a reasonable person. The younger brother bowed his head full of sadness. His face darkened, Jang Tyson sat on the side and kept saying, can you give me more points? Or do I want to level up? The younger brother was embarrassed, his face turned red and said, I wanted to go to the amusement park. After listening, Jang Tyson was frozen for 5 seconds. Not believing what he heard, amusement park? Vladimir was immersed in his dream. His eyes lit up and he looked forward with a bright smile, he wanted to go to the biggest and most beautiful amusement park in Russia that he had ever lived in, that's my only dream. Jang Tyson looked at his brother affectionately and thought, I've heard that story before. Vladimir's greatest joy while alive was a picnic at an amusement park with his parents. Looking at his brother immersed in thinking about his dream, his face radiated happiness when thinking about what he wanted, he continued to think, the boy wanted to share that feeling of happiness with others, the child is living and growing up in Russia, a better brother than I thought. At night at the Mulcastle building, when the moon was high, shining in the sky. The clicking sound from the keyboard rang out continuously. In front of screen was still lit. I didn't know what it was. It turned out to be Jang Tyson. It's midnight and he's still sitting in front of the computer screen typing away. I have to immediately invite a mathematician who is good at algorithms. He's a genius in computers, but he doesn't know much about algorithms. I need to compensate for this, he said, after receiving energy from Vladimir. He could see it, to see how lax network security was these days. Jang Tyson's face also became more thoughtful and said, to have stronger energy, I need to learn more. Looking at the screen filled with letters and numbers, he also let out an exclamation. He is indeed a genius boy, having found a weakness in the network system that will happen in 2017. Jang Tyson becomes dangerous in the next 10 years. I will have all the computer systems in the world in my hands, if I am determined. It will not be a problem. The scene changes to a tall company building, surrounded by works in many fields. Suddenly there was a pair of long, slender legs, walking on high heels, looking very beautiful, surrounded by curious voices. Oh, that girl. Her hair was tied into a ponytail, very youthful and energetic. Some people wondered if she was a student at our school. They all turned their curious eyes towards the girl. Everyone was staring at her as if she were a celebrity. Among them someone asked, Is that Insean? The girl with her hair tied in a ponytail, wearing blue pants and high heels stood among everyone, making herself stand out. Everyone who passed by looked back a few times. The students looked curiously and replied, No, it looks like you can see the head. All around were rumors about the girl, a student from another school. Wasn't she a beautiful girl from our school? The girl standing among the students was equally bewildered, as if looking for something. She thought, we were planning to meet in the parking lot, where did we go? She moved forward. Behind them they continued to discuss, who is that, Insean. Maybe go on a blind date. 3 students with faces full of teasing stared at the senior and said, If you see a senior, you should say hello, wow, look at that graceful figure. The other 3 guys seemed to want to tease her to the end, surrounding her and teasing her. She should have dressed up a bit earlier. Great, he has a gentle face, but why is he his face, huh? The more Insean thought about it, the angrier he became, cursing silently. You hateful virus bastards. She was walking when she heard those words and was so angry that she had to stop. Behind her were very hateful voices saying, Hey, that girl, Insean. When the other 3 saw her standing still, they cleared their throats even more aggressively. They thought they were seniors and could say whatever they wanted. The other 3's faces showed an aggressive look and shouted loudly, We praise her for her beautiful face. Are they disrespecting our seniors? They kept surrounding her and saying harsh words. That's why she was called a witch. This cheeky girl. At this moment, a figure appeared from behind, seemingly having witnessed the scenes just now. Insean was angry, biting his lip and scolding, You bastards. Suddenly, a tall figure appeared from behind and grabbed the heads of the 2 guys, making them stunned. A familiar voice rang out and apologized. The other 2 guys were grabbed by the head. So startled they turned around and asked loudly, Who are you? Insean seemed to see someone familiar. Her eyes contained a ray of joy in them. No, Mr. Jang. The other 2 men stood in shock opposite the man. His face looked very gloomy and unpredictable. They seemed to have provoked the wrong person. Suddenly Jang Tyson smiled brightly like a spring flower and introduced himself as Sean's boyfriend. Insean widened her eyes and suddenly looked at the person opposite her, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. She was extremely confused by Jang Tyson. The scene changes to an apartment building. The girl's voice rings out, wondering if his family is a tycoon. A male voice replied, You can make a living in many ways. Those are Jang Tyson and Insean. Jang Tyson politely invited Sean to get in the car, so she got in the car. She couldn't the truth before her eyes, her mouth opened in surprise. She didn't even dare to touch the car, let alone get on it, she thought. What the hell? Standing in front of an attractive red sports car made Insean exclaim in admiration at how beautiful the car was, her face filled with admiration as she looked at the car. Jang Tyson witnessed this scene and was helpless. Do you need a car? I'll give it to you too. Insean was startled when he heard this. His face turned into an O and his mouth turned into an A as he looked towards the person who had just made this suggestion. Don't do that to me. A halo of light seemed to radiate around Jang Tyson's body. He said slowly and sincerely, Didn't you say you would be responsible for Sean's life? After hearing this, Insean was all sweaty. She went from one surprise to another. Her eyes showed confusion, stammering and saying, Are you really planning to get married? Jang Tyson's eyes became steadfast as he looked towards Insean and asked, Do you want to marry me? She screamed in her heart, Don't do that to me. Jang Tyson smiled gently, not giving up and continued, Didn't senior tell us to go on a date first? Insean was startled and replied awkwardly, That's it. Her cheeks turned red. Her face became stiff and she said, You said you were a boyfriend first, so how responsible are you? She was confused, not knowing how he would handle it, looking up at him with sparkling eyes as if she wanted to cry. Are you planning to hire me as your lifelong employee, your new student? Jang Tizian acted very calmly, as if it was a natural thing to say. Oh, how did you know that? And Xian couldn't believe his ears. What? Jang Tizian continued to say that his senior was in Xian. Her face turned red again and she looked at him bewilderedly, waiting for him to continue. Jang Tizian's face also became dangerous. Looking towards her and said, don't you want to dream a hot dream with me? These words took her from one surprise to another, making her extremely confused, exclaiming, what? The red car drove to the school and stopped with the rumbling sound of the car engine. From inside the car, I heard Jang Tizian's voice, Senior, get out of the car. There were a lot of students walking around. Some people also noticed this outstanding car and turned to look. Two people, a man and a woman, got out of the car together and stood out. No matter what anyone said, then I will also be your senior's boyfriend. This sentence made Xian dizzy. What did he say? At the same time, she thought to herself, definitely a bad person. What should I do? Her eyes opened wide in surprise, sweat poured out and she thought, no, Xian, wake up quickly. But Jang Tizian acted as if he didn't see that. He leisurely looked at his sister and said very sincerely, I want to give a gift to my senior. After hearing this, Xian opened his mouth and suddenly turned to look at Jang Tizian. What, a gift? Jang Tizian smiled brightly, his eyes filled with affection and said, that gift is the fastest and strongest supercomputer in the world. After hearing these words, her eyes became frightened, as if something had stabbed her in the heart. The reason she studied information technology was because she wanted to create the most powerful supercomputer in the world. But, looking at the man in front of him, he seemed very normal, looking at him as if he didn't know anything, but this made her even more panicked. How did he know about this? The sky is still so beautiful, the birds are carefree and innocently flying above it, ignoring the world around them. The scene changed to a sky-high company building. From inside I heard a heavy scolding. Is that all my ability has? The person on the other end of the line is afraid to respond. I'm sorry, CEO, on this side. The voice of the so-called CEO replied, okay, if you can't handle just one woman, how should I trust you? The man with the angry face continued, don't contact me after today. It's not just your company that contacts me. Hearing these words made the person on the other end of the line even more scared and said, CEO, please give me another chance. I'll send the Aram that's been singing recently to the examiner. When the director heard this, he seemed to realize something and asked, if it's Aram, is it Unique's Aram? This man quickly replied, yes, it's her. Isn't that girl beautiful? I choose someone to entertain the CEO, but how can I choose lightly? Tonight I'll let her get on the plane with the director. The other party heard that and said a little smugly, really, that's okay, I'll trust you again. With the approval of the CEO. This made the man feel a bit relieved. Thank you, CEO, the other party replied, do it well later. But after hanging up the phone, the man's face showed resentment, his face darkened, damn you son of a bitch. Then he turned back to look at the man next to him. He really shouted, Director Choi, where is that cunning little girl, have you found it yet? Director Choi said, found it. The other guy asked right back, so, where are you? At this point, Director Choi seemed confused. That's it. Lee Kwang-ju heard Director Choi hesitantly answer and became angry, saying, what again? Don't tell me it's at the police station. Director Choi replied slowly, being with Director Huang of M.T.S. Hearing this name made the other guy surprised. What Huang Yundi? Director Choi's face became serious, as if to prove that what he was investigating was correct. His eyes became determined. I confirmed that she had gone to Huang Yiwan's company. After that her whereabouts were unknown. Hearing this, Lee Kwang-ju grimaced in discomfort. His eyes filled with evil. That bastard Huang Yundi, did he take the wrong medicine? Do you want to die? Saying that, he screamed, his eyes became dangerous. He must definitely get that girl back here. If Huang Yundi gets in the way, then drag her back here. He angrily slammed his hand on the table and shouted, that son of a bitch dares to kick over my rice bowl. Director Choi saw that the situation was not good and took a few steps back in fear. His eyes also turned pale with fear. He immediately replied to run away to avoid being afraid. Yes, I will go to work right away. The more he thought about Huang Yundi, the angrier he became. His face tightened, his eyes were full of resentment, as if he wanted to devour them. Huang Yundi, you're dead. In the towering company building, everyone was busy with their work, when suddenly someone called Robert. It seems like this is an online meeting. On the other side is Robert, and on this side is the company president, he said, let's invest all the election funds through our subsidiaries, bought out and attracted more lobbyists. Robert on the other side seemed a bit surprised. The chairman currently has a relatively large amount of money in our election fund. Jang Tyson smiled brightly, showing his professionalism. We probably have to invest more in it. He continued, just invest within the limit of $5 billion. When Robert heard about that huge amount of money, he gasped in surprise. $5 billion. Facing this calm president, Robert began to calculating 5 trillion won, which was enough to wipe out the entire US election, before the development of SNS. The effectiveness of advertising and speech. Chairman, that's a decisive bet. After hearing this, Tyson smiled with satisfaction. He reminded, if possible, don't let this matter get out. The Republican side will continue to pump money to them appropriately. He looked down as if thinking of something. 8 years after the election ended, the world would change again, the reason why politicians in America also crave power. In the end, it's just about money. He turned his head to look at the vast sky outside. As if feeling the lightness of the weather, he thought, today's weather is really beautiful. Suddenly someone knocked outside. Knock, knock. Tyson happily looked towards the door and said, please come in. In the director's office, a girl with blonde hair now appeared. This person was Kang Yeseo, and was received quite thoughtfully by Tyson. Kang Yeseo looked at the president in front of her as if thinking something. She couldn't believe that this was the legendary president. Was this person really the company's president? She looked at his young face, adding to her thoughts. According to the group leader, he was still a student, a descendant of a tycoon family. Tyson looked at the girl in front of him. He gently asked, how is it here? Is there anything inconvenient? She listened to him while looking at him attentively. Inwardly admiring him, his skin was even more beautiful than her own. She was startled as soon as she asked the question. Her face stiffened as if she had discovered that she was looking at her. She confusedly replied, yes, it's really good here. As for Tyson, he didn't pay that much attention. He was afraid that he wouldn't feel comfortable, so he reminded him to make himself at home. Kang Yeseo hasn't heard that much. He's still thinking about this president's beauty, what cosmetics he uses, and his body is also handsome. Then she regained her usual composure and spoke, but the director, he replied, yes, just say. It's. Her face became puzzled. She looked at Tyson and asked, what is this person doing? I heard CRA say he is still a student. Tyson smiled and introduced himself. I am a law student at Korean University. When she heard this, he replied, Korean University. There was something wrong with this. It seemed like she heard something shocking. She opened her eyes wide, gasped, surprised for a few seconds. The law department of a Korean university. Tyson looked at her in surprise and was not surprised. He introduced himself again. And I was both the president and largest shareholder of MTS. The more she listened, the more she expressed her admiration. Wow, so great. For someone so young to be able to hold such a high position, this made her even more curious about his age, so she immediately asked. Then his age. Tyson smiled and replied very politely, 20 years old. Once again she was surprised, couldn't believe it. How was it possible? 20 stars. Looking at her as if she didn't believe it was true, Tyson smiled slowly and asked again, what's wrong? Is there a problem? When she was asked back, she stuttered and replied, no, nothing. She looked at the man in front of her and couldn't believe her eyes. Faced with this face, her thoughts grew more and more. What the heck, really only 20 years old? She was confused and couldn't believe it was true. Her eyes kept staring in his direction. Were the aliens? How could this be possible? Suddenly Tyson asked if she had an American passport. The girl was bewildered and didn't know why he asked that. Oh yes, I am an American citizen. When he heard that, he smiled with satisfaction, smiled at her and said, okay, I'm going to America. Do you want to go with me? The girl suddenly asked, are you going to America? Mentioning America reminded her of something. Her eyes began to well up with tears, and her mood also became more chaotic. Tyson looked at her sincerely and asked, don't you remember your parents? Hearing him say that, her tears fell like rain. Her eyes were still wide open looking at the other person. It seemed like she still couldn't calm down. She didn't think he would ask her that question. Seeing her like that, he smiled gently and comforted her. Don't cry, in the future only good things will come to her. Suddenly his face darkened, a sad look appeared on his face and he continued asking, if she can cancel the contract with that party, where are you going to go? The girl burst into tears, speechless. Did you cancel the contract? She heard him ask that. Even though she was crying, she still tried to look serious and sincerely said, if so, if possible, I want to devote myself to MTS. Hearing this, he was very satisfied. His face smiled contentedly and said, you must keep that word. She raised her head to look at him, asking again to make sure, will you really accept me into MTS? Tyson's face became more dangerous, his sharp eyes said, I will make you a star, not only in Korea but also in Asia. The whole room was very serious when her phone rang, ringing throughout the room. She shyly said, wait for me. Tyson laughed twice and said, listen up. She lowered her head to answer the phone and asked, what are you calling me for? At the other end of the second, I only heard the cry of a woman, Yeseo, excited. As if discovering something bad had happened, she called out in panic, Miss, what's wrong, why? Suddenly the voice on the other side rang out causing panic, eyes widened as if something serious was happening. The other side spoke up, Kang Yeseo, appear. When she heard this voice, she couldn't guess who it was. So she asked, who is it? The man on the other side replied, have you already forgotten my voice? When she heard this, she almost guessed who it was. Hearing this voice made her even more scared. Her tears kept falling and she couldn't say a word. The other party spoke up and continued. I'm the director. She panicked and asked, Choi, director, why are you holding my aunt's phone? On the other side, Director Choi replied very hatefully, she really didn't know. Tyson sat to the side and heard this conversation clearly. His face turned dark. Director Choi acted like nothing happened and continued, I know you're hiding at Hwang Yoni's place. She doesn't care that much, she's scared to protect her aunt. My aunt has nothing to do with this. She was scared and worried, crying and saying, why did you do that to my aunt? Let her go, miss. The other side ignored Kang Yesios please, the other guy threatened. While I was still saying nice things, quickly return to the company, if so, your aunt will be safe. Suddenly, a hand reached out and grabbed the phone from her hand, making her surprised and not understanding what was happening. She turned around and saw that Tyson had picked up his phone and answered, Director Choi, it's me. She looked at the person across from her in bewilderment, her eyes sparkled with confusion. The other end of the line replied aggressively. It's me, who is that, damn it, Hwang Yonhee. He pretended not to hear the screams on the other side of the phone and slowly answered, no, the other party shouted angrily, so who are you, bastard? Tyson gave a sinister smile, his eyes also became colder and replied, the one chosen to defeat the crazy people, you just wait. The alarm sounded in the company building, emergency. Emergency situation for everyone. Everyone working was also surprised by the alarm, everyone's face looked very confused, everyone, what's up? A man came out and said loudly, this is the boss's order. All the staff below didn't know what was going on but they all answered in unison. Yes, we will handle it right away. The man's face became serious and he informed everyone to activate the emergency communication system and gather everyone. I think it's a level 1 alarm. After those people received the order, they immediately ran to carry out the orders. The running made the floor of the house tremble. As they ran, they said to each other, we have an hour, hurry up, what, isn't there a war somewhere? The other man clenched his teeth, revealing teeth as wide and even as corn kernels and said, even though he didn't know who he was. If he dared to touch the boss, then they all must die. His face exuded coldness. His eyes filled with danger. In another place, there was also someone worried about this matter. He put the documents in his briefcase and said, are you prepared? The people standing opposite him replied in unison, all were ready. This is Lawyer Cho Yoon-tae. Lawyer Cho's face also became serious, reminding the rest that no negligence is allowed. He suddenly became quiet. His face suddenly darkened as if remembering something. That was the person who gave me the lifeline, so I am extremely grateful to that person. The people wearing black shirts standing in line below heard their boss say that and replied in unison, yes. Then Lawyer Cho became sinister and said, and don't be afraid of things like 5 punches without eyes, because if you want to be by my side, you have to endure those things. The men below heard these words and still smiled calmly, as if this had scared them, saying, please don't worry, I am a former criminal prosecutor, that's nothing. In an office, a man's voice rang out, Director Jang, it's time to depart. Director Jang heard that it was time and replied, well, then let's go quickly. The other man replied, yes. In another high-rise building, from the highest room came a voice that sounded unexpected. What, are you here? Director Cho smiled and replied, yes, they said they were on their way. After listening to Lee Kwang-ju, he saw that this was not a big deal. He didn't seem to be worried about what was to come. What is it? Hasn't it already happened? Just a pretty rabbit. This Director Choi also seemed very indifferent. Following his boss's words, his face also showed an arrogant look, saying, we are holding his aunt so he cannot escape. Kang Yeseo is not a cruel name. The other guy heard that and laughed very happily. The danger on his face did not change. Very good, Director Choi, I like you more and more. Director Choi heard that and bowed down happily, thank you. The other guy took a cigarette and put it in his mouth, looking very formal, saying, that girl needs to be seriously taught this time, she's a stupid girl with a hot body. When Director Choi heard that, he didn't feel very good, his face suddenly looked worried. If he were to educate him, that's fine. Before he could finish his sentence, the other guy stole the other part. He held a cigarette in his mouth while looking at Director Choi with a sinister look and said, then send it to Mr. Kwanful for about a month. If you send it there, it will definitely be much more obedient. Anyway, it's time to warn those people. The more he talked, the more pleased he became. Anyway, nothing will change. From now on, this world will still be ours. When he finished speaking, he laughed loudly and was very pleased. Director Choi, standing next to him, also laughed happily. We don't show up often these days, so that's why it's like this. If it was before, the kids would definitely have been taught with a piece of wood already. Suddenly, the desk phone rang continuously, as if something was going to happen to them. Director Lee Guangju picked up the phone, but the other side spoke with a worried voice, announcing, Director, something big has happened. At the other end of the second, he didn't know what was being said, but it seemed very serious. The director's face also turned pale. He asked worriedly, "What's going on? Are the police coming?" The staff on the other side were so worried that they couldn't speak. "We were being attacked." After hearing this, Li Guangzhu's face became full of danger, his eyes widened and he shouted loudly, "What, is this a drama?" The employee was explaining the incident to him. There were dozens of members of a certain organization wearing black vests surrounding the building. The more he listened, the more panicked he became. Sweat started pouring out. He worriedly asked, "What, it's surrounded? Tell me clearly." Director Choi stood next to him and didn't understand anything. The other side continued to update the situation, and Kang Yesio also stood there with them. Director, now there are a few more people coming out of the elevator." His face darkened and he quickly spoke, stopping him. "Hey, we have to stop them by all means." As soon as he finished speaking, there was the sound of rapid footsteps from outside. When the two of them in the office heard it, they panicked, their faces showed fear. Their eyes darkened, and their faces turned pale. Director Lee screamed in fear, his face bleeding. "Director Choi, contact Mr. Kwangful immediately." Director Choi was also scared, stammering. Yes, I will contact him immediately." Without giving them a chance to call for help. People outside walked to the office door, blocking their escape route. A voice rang out, "Come in." A group of people rushed straight into the other guy's room, standing in front of those two directors with an appearance that exuded a dangerous smell. Those two guys stepped back in fear, their faces darkened and they couldn't say a word. You. One of the people who rushed in spoke first, "Director Lee, it's been a long time since I've seen him." That Director Lee, after witnessing this scene, his face became ferocious, his eyes lit up with hatred, blood streaks were clearly visible, he gritted his teeth and said, "Huan Fi any bastard." That person calmly crossed his arms and faced the other guy, not showing any fear, just smiled and said, "Not a bastard, but Director Lee of the entertainment company M.T.S." When that guy heard that, he cursed loudly and shut up. "What kind of director is a dirty dog like you?" Being scolded, but that man didn't pay attention, it sounded like the wind blowing through his hands. He turned back to look at his teammates and said, "Is Director Lee committing an insult or defaming someone else's honor? Is that right, lawyer?" When the other lawyer was asked that, he immediately replied, "Of course, and that's it." The other lawyer had a tape recorder in his hand. It seemed like he had recorded the entire conversation just now. Those dirty, bitchy words were perfect evidence. The sound of cursing just now came from the recorder. "Shut up, a dirty dog like you is no director." Director Lee knew he had been set up, his face radiated anxiety and fear, his teeth clenched, sweat began to flow. "Who are you? Call the police here, these guys are deliberately sabotaging our business." He looked at Director Choi and shouted worriedly. Director Choi quickly called 112. Director Choi also listened in fear, stammering and saying, yes. Suddenly there was laughter filled with sarcasm from outside the door. A pair of feet wearing leather shoes and trousers walked in with a voice, "Sabotaging business, Director Lee, do you understand what Director Lee just said?" The more Director Lee heard, the angrier he became. His face contorted, he screamed and cursed back, "What do you want? What I said sounds funny." The man who just walked in was not the average person. He spoke slowly. This guy, why did he speak so loudly when talking about kidnapping? As if stabbing him in the black heart, his face stiffened a bit, but then he still refused to admit it and shouted, "Arrest, kidnap, what nonsense is this crazy guy talking about?" The man who had just walked in sneered and said, "Am I talking nonsense?" Then, without letting him guess his identity anymore, that man began to introduce himself. "I am Cho Yuntae, CEO of Samwoo Law Firm." After hearing Cho Yuntae's introduction, Director Choi and Director Lee gasped in surprise, as if they couldn't believe their ears. Their eyes were wide open, filled with confusion. They didn't expect that the person who came this time was someone else, of Samwoo Law Firm. Cho Yuntae stood opposite Director Lee. His face suddenly darkened, exuding unpredictable danger. He continued, "That's right, you both know that. A few years ago the lawyer defended the director, is me." Director Lee went from one surprise to another, unable to utter a word. Lawyer Cho Yuntae's face immediately became serious. "Because I'm an ethical lawyer, I won't reveal client information, but isn't that how everyone lives their whole life, a person without conscience?" Lawyer Cho continued to say, "I am older than the director, so if I accidentally say something blank, I hope the director will sympathize. Because I'm a former prosecutor, I have a habit of cursing just when I see a criminal." He smiled provocatively and continued, "So please answer well, Kwang Jua." The young man standing next to him looked at him with admiring eyes, secretly praising his talent. "Wow, what a great lawyer." Suddenly, Kang Yesin walked in. Her face was a little haggard because of worry. She asked in fear, "Where is my aunt?" Director Choi and Director Lee saw Kang Yesin and their eyes widened in surprise. They didn't know why she was with this group of people. What is it after all? The lawyer looked at the other two men and said dangerously, "Kwangju, kidnapping, you know that is a serious crime, right? In prison for about 5 years." Lawyer Cho's words seemed to hit right at their weak point. The more they heard, the more scared they became, and their faces turned pale. Fear was clearly visible on his face. Lawyer Cho continues to add fuel to the fire. "Director, please contact the prosecutor at the Central Procuracy, okay? Call the reporters too." Unable to continue listening to these threats anymore, Director Choi suddenly spoke up. No, it's not kidnapping. After finishing speaking, Kang Yeseo retorted and lied. It was you who kidnapped my aunt to force me to return to the company. Director Choi was worried, his face stiffened, trying to defend himself to escape this danger. Yeseo, that's not it. How could that happen? We only invited you here to discuss your future. Kang Yeseo couldn't stand this talkative person, shouting so loudly, "Where is my aunt?" On this side, Director Lee's face was full of hatred, his hateful eyes looked at the Kang Yeseo faction as if he wanted to devour her. Lawyer Cho didn't want to listen to these ramblings anymore, so he directly requested that the police be called quickly. I'm a bit busy this weekend, I have to go to a class reunion in the evening. Another voice rang out, shouting at those two directors. Listen to the bad guys. Director Lee was staring at Lawyer Cho, thinking, this guy, he chose me, an easy target. A young man suddenly spoke up and cursed the two directors. It seemed like he was not afraid of anything and said directly, there's nothing wrong with criminals. Do I look like I'm easily bullied? A bunch of miserable beggars. The two directors heard curses like lightning. They didn't know what was going on. What happened? That young man stood in the middle of the large room, speaking loudly, saying he was waiting for the thugs protecting him to come save him. Okay, just call everyone. He continued to cross his arms and said in front of the bewildered and surprised looks of the other two directors, I have called the journalists over, they will have a lot of stories to write and report. The company director is a trash, kidnapped, and illegally detained, even hired gangsters. That's a good story. Director Lee looked surprised when he heard this, he seemed to not believe what he had just heard, he could only utter one word, you. Then that young man changed his target to Director Choi, he didn't care who was afraid but he remained calm like that. Smiling and saying, Director Choi, you understand what I mean? Director Choi was surprised when he suddenly mentioned his name, startled and exclaimed, what? Director Choi was also bewildered by this incident, he did not understand anything, his face looked blank and bewildered. Suddenly, Jang Tae-sun's eyes flashed, staring at the Director Choi asked, don't you remember? I am that crazy neighbor. Hearing this, Director Choi seemed to remember something. His face was full of surprise, his face showed disbelief. Jang Tae-sun continued, and is currently president of M.T.S. He still smiled gently like that, meaning that I was also the person involved in this matter. Director Choi glared at Tae-sun. What do you have to do with this? Tae-sun smiled evilly and said, Director Choi. You think it's too much, kidnapping and pretending to be a bribery plan to sponsor actors. I will replace the management company to help actor Kang. Director Choi angrily slammed his hand on the table and shouted, shut up. Tae-sun didn't even look at him and said, Representative Han, go find him. He also smiled and said to the girl next to him. Yeseo also went to look for it, think about where it is. Yeseo worriedly thought to himself that this man is not simple. Director Choi roared madly. Where are you going, Yeseo? Her career as an actress will end. Director Choi was now provoked by Tae-sun and shouted loudly, damn bastard. There was a loud noise in the room at this moment. The wooden table placed in the middle of the room was broken in half, and the employees of Anna Company all looked at Tae-sun in panic. Tae-sun coldly ordered, Yeseo, don't worry. Go find it. Yes, Director Yeseo replied in the surprise of Director Choi. Tae-sun glanced fiercely at the director and said, you bastard, don't make trouble and take your seat if you don't want to go to hell. Director Choi's eyes looked like he wanted to kill Tae-sun immediately. What a bastard. Tae-sun looked at him fearlessly and said, your plan is over, it's over, bastard. Don't be there and raise your voice at me, if you don't want to die, I'll even know the secret bribe account. Tae-sun didn't answer his question and said, Director Choi quickly brought Kang Yeseo's contract here, he didn't expect him to be so stubborn and dare to give him orders. What? Tae-sun's lawyer Yundi spoke with disdain, they give off a bad smell. Now I will contact the juniors and start the search and confiscation. I am the director of Samwoo Law Firm. After hearing this, Director Choi was surprised and speechless. Chaotic voices rang out in the room. Aunt, are you okay? Are you hurt? No, I'm just a little scared, but I'm here, it's okay, don't cry, Yeseo, hey, I'm sorry. President Anna silently suppressed her anger. Calmly sit down and give orders. Director Choi brought the contract here. You've won bad karma points, you've won bad karma points. After listening, Tae-sun smiled happily, the idea of having your points doubled. The sky today is extremely beautiful, full of sunshine and wind. There is only one house in the middle of a vast beach. The man said seriously, what is the reason why stocks in Hong Kong have dropped sharply? The blue-haired man respectfully replied, since October of last year, foreign company funds have been sold short, sir. The owner coldly considered, the foreign company sold short. At this time, Zhuge Liang was the 30th generation descendant of Zhuge Liang. Dan's advisor said, private investment funds and investment companies established in the United States, Europe and tax havens are conducting short sales. After listening, the main man's eyes narrowed slightly. The entire stock market in the world collapsed. It seemed a bit serious because China's great dream of reviving China's dream cannot come true unless eliminate militarism and local forces. Zhuge mercifully said, after all, this was a planned battle but quite difficult. The master asked coldly, was it the Children's Fund or the Knights Guild, dear delegation leader? This matter is quite difficult to grasp because everything has been mixed up. The cat family is generous, try to think of any countermeasures, the man thought and replied. I think we should reduce bloodshed to some extent. The leader said with a black face that if he wanted to cut off his head, he had to cut it with a strong blow. The competition between those who hold world economic power in the shadow of war breaks out every day due to opposition and hostility over interests and individuals. Even the current allies who are children cannot be trusted that if exposed to the sun, they will be immediately attacked. The leader continued to say, if we can't find a clue, let's look for the Snake Worshipper Knights Guild. The remaining children are the secret organization of the Assassins Guild. Zhuge Liang bowed his head respectfully and replied that I would try my best to find out. The master voiced a warning not to overdo it. There is no need to fight the snake until it appears. Also, when will the family heir sent by the night order appear? Zhuge mercifully reported that he will land in Hong Kong next week, sir. The Don asked for help from that sweet, beautiful girl. A smile appeared on her face. I will have to inform Clara. Clara will definitely be satisfied that the son of the president of the knighthood not only has ability but also has appearance. If not satisfied, there is no other choice. The leader of the group returned to his original state, his face cold, and said, he must stick closely with the Knights Guild to be able to deal with the remaining enemies. Clara knows that well. The man finished speaking and thought to himself, Clara, don't hate me. That is my destiny. Over here, the sun has finally said. Tyson said sadly, what's wrong? It seems like something happened to Clara. Contact does not pick up the phone. Tyson smiled and thought to himself, in the year 2008, politics will change its decision in the next 10 years. The soulful light shines straight on Tyson's handsome face. If it's destiny, we will meet each other. Right now, my focus is not on love but on the world economy. Tyson thought to himself, the butterfly effect hasn't happened yet. China's stock market reached the 6,000 mark in October last year, has dropped straight down to 1,700 in November 2,800. Next, a free party will open in a grand way. Even if you don't have money, you can't short sell stocks. Tyson happily smiled and said, I will take all that money. Power also requires money to be able to act. The foreign exchange flow will take place as expected. The exchange rate will remain hidden. The more I think about it, the more interesting it becomes. Investing is everyone's responsibility, don't complain. It's everyone's choice. Tyson stood looking at the city at night, revealing a rare dangerous look. Oh, Chairman, Sung Hyuk is still alive and having fun. Yes, let's enjoy it while we can a few months later. He will wander in endless space. Tyson thought to himself, Robert convened a shareholders meeting next month and it will end in June. Oh Dongjong, I promised. In just 1 year you will see hell. Tyson went inside and said, now let's get ready for school. I'm more suited to art university than the gloomy court academy. Tomorrow I have a lunch date with Senior Yuri, Wednesday is lunch with Senior Cian. He secretly smiled. Everyone who looked at him would misunderstand that he went to school to seduce beautiful women. Tyson comfortably leaned on the sofa and said, it's okay to date a beautiful person of the opposite sex in your 20s is also a blessing. He pondered for a moment then spoke. The time is near and everything has been prepared as desired. Tyson's face showed surprise, unable to summon the reincarnated god. Morart has only been a god for 200 years and has not yet been reincarnated. What's going on? No, then who else is there besides Morart anymore? Looking at the surroundings covered by dark shadows, his heart became even more worried. But where is this? While he was still deep in thought, the whole room was lit up again. Looking at the horse flying towards him, Tyson was startled. What the hell? Why does the horse have winged horns? The horse just kept rushing towards Tyson. The closer he got, the more he realized that it seemed to be a unicorn. Seeing it keep looking at him like that, Tyson suddenly asked as if possessed, do you know me? Why are you calling me? The unicorn seemed to understand what he said and shook its head to show that it was not. A voice came from behind, little brother, that's what I called. Tyson turned around and looked at the man standing in front of him in surprise. Tyson said in fear, he is a saint. In the darkness the man replied, do you know me? The man introduced himself, I am Saint Bethoven. Tyson was surprised, he was also here but he immediately recognized it when he saw it, oh my god. Beethoven's sacred music, called sacred music, is standing and laughing in front of me. Tyson asked, is your ear problem cured? Beethoven smiled and said, my ear problem is okay. Once you become a god, all human diseases will disappear. Besides, it's not a disease that humans can cure. After hearing that, Tyson didn't understand, huh? Beethoven further explained, if the explanation is simple, then that is exactly what sickness is like. You said you were sick. That's right, little brother, you don't know that, but most of us who work in the arts can communicate with God. Although I don't explain how hard it is to compose, the gods always wanted to perform the arts, music, and writing that they studied there. So they are also busy, including me. Tyson was stunned when he heard that. Beethoven proudly said, although I cannot know everything, I have left behind a masterpiece. Which is the energy I get when communicating with the gods. So did my teacher Morart, as did most of the other famous musicians. All of this is a sensory combination of human and divine communication. Beethoven coughed lightly and said, you don't need to worry, little brother. Because you've already met me. Tyson didn't understand anything but still smiled and replied, yes. Tyson looked at Beethoven and thought, I summoned Beethoven instead of Morart. Seeing that this situation was not quite right, Tyson asked suspiciously, where are you going, where has Mr. Morart gone? Beethoven was startled and said, Mr. Morart. He continuously attacked Beethoven with questions, is Beethoven's teacher, right? I want to meet him once. I heard that he has become a god, whether he is here or not. Beethoven was frightened by your sharpness. Tyson called out loudly inside, Mr. Morart. Beethoven quickly stopped, wait, he's on a business trip. Work star. Beethoven made up a fake reason, he had a performance there. Tyson laughed excitedly, what's wrong? I'll wait, I also like Mr. Beethoven very much. But I'm a fan of Mr. Morart. Seeing that he couldn't chase people away, Beethoven got annoyed and said, what are you waiting for? You don't know when you'll come back. If you need talent, ask me. Tyson heard the idea of chasing away guests but still refused to leave. It's okay, where? Beethoven laughed and said, but you said you liked me even though it was the first time we met. I thought you were my longtime brother. Tyson happily replied, yes. But I have to rent it every day to use it, is it right? In the room, melodious piano sounds rang out. Beethoven looked at Tyson worriedly. He was disillusioned by the scene in front of him, the performance was so chaotic, not everyone has become a god. Beethoven smiled brightly and asked, little brother, how did the premonition come, even though the instrument is simple? This is the 99th symphony that I have composed. He was secretly surprised. What is the 99th? Didn't you only compose up to number 9? Beethoven explained that after becoming a god, his mind became clearer, even the hallucinations that had bothered me before disappeared. And the melody just flowed out. Tyson was extremely surprised. Even though the circumstances and musical instruments are simple, the famous song is still a famous song. If 99 of Beethoven's symphonies were released in the human world, it would be wonderful. The music suddenly stopped and he asked, why did it stop, is it over? Beethoven replied, yes, that's a pity. Looking at the band in front of you, you can say the same thing, the last song has a choir with a female singer, so the touching feeling of this sound can explode. I also think so, he wondered, is that true? Beethoven smiled affectionately, there was no one here who was a famous singer. None of the gods here are opera singers. Hearing that, Tyson wondered, why is that? Because they didn't have time to come here to watch that performance. Tyson opened his mouth in surprise, God, why don't you listen to this famous song, it's really great. Beethoven turned back to look at him and said, there are many singing birds here, we are overwhelmed by them. What do you say, birds can sing? Beethoven spoke sadly, the lynx was very beautiful and sang beautifully. Besides, no one listens to electric instruments anymore, we are out of time, making ends meet is increasingly difficult. Tyson suggested that if possible, please spread these songs to the world and let humanity know about your famous songs. Would that change the music trend? Beethoven replied with a heavy voice, of course it was me, tried but can't. There was no progress, a voice from behind rang out. Tyson turned around and asked who he was. The man introduced himself, I'm Chopin. Another voice came, even when it came into contact with people and conveyed hunches about new songs, but it quickly disappeared. Tyson turned his head again, confused and asked, who are you? I'm Wagner. The sound of footsteps echoed along with the voice, please help us. Tyson smiled shyly and asked, who are you? I am Rachmaninoff, the man who has shed his vanity and mediocrity. A series of other voices rang out, I am Puccini, I am Verdi, I am Schumann, I am Brahms. Causing Tyson to stand still in bewilderment. At this time, Beethoven spoke up, in fact, our industry has dropped a lot now, if we can't pay the rent in a few days, everything will be confiscated, brother please save us. One singer among them angrily said, if he hadn't beaten and threatened to take over the remaining karma points, he would have thought to himself, had he been stolen. They angrily denounced a person who was so hateful that even thinking about it brought tears to his eyes. He wiped out all his karma points and told us not to worry but to believe in him, a traitor. Tyson felt something was wrong and asked, could that thief be Mr. Morart? Beethoven's eyes were full of hatred and said, yes. Tyson thought to himself, stealing all the karma points and reincarnating. What will I do to help people? My karma points are not infinite if I help people then. Before he could finish his sentence, they shouted happily, I also sold my talent very cheaply. I have more than 100 piano sonatas, me too. The room just now was bustling with voices, symphonies, chamber music, choir songs. Just need you to state your request, reduce the full price or not reduce 99%, I will reduce 99.9%. Tyson made a suggestion, asking if everyone was going to work part-time. After hearing this, everyone was confused. Part-time, what was that? Tyson smiled sinisterly. Miss Jean, are you busy and see me for a moment? Following Tyson's call, Jean also quickly appeared. What's the matter, little brother? Ms. Jean smiled mischievously and said, what's going on? Jang Tyson smiled and said, they want to see it, sister. His eyes showed evil. Ms. Jean showed her shiny butt and said gently, don't be rude. The men below looked at it and their eyes lit up. For the first time in their lives they were able to admire such a wonderful scene on earth. She put on an extremely perfect appearance and said, do you think I would believe those lies from men? The person with the same appearance as me felt extremely admired, or rather, wanted to possess this girl, so I stammered and asked, who is this noble goddess, boy? The rest of the people also couldn't stop talking. Oh my god, could it be that she was a fox in her past life? The rest of the people were so excited to praise her, she's so beautiful. The girl had now walked towards everyone, using her seductive tone, was talking to me. Everyone around saw this gorgeous girl, their hearts were pounding, just my type. He was very satisfied with this expression of hers. He walked over, making the whole room silent. He was very close to her. He stood almost completely next to Sister Jean. Sister, they are all our prey, she nodded. I know, wait and see, today or tomorrow they will all be kicked out of the fairyland, just gender. Seeing that, he nodded and smiled and turned around to pretend to be angry at the people around him. Everyone please calm down, now is the time to indulge in the goddess later. He used his strongest motivation and said, if everyone is expelled from the fairy world, what will happen to the people? Among everyone, how many people have accumulated points while alive? That strong motivation of his surprised everyone standing in the stands. When he saw that expression, he knew he had an advantage. To continue, they were all extremely sensitive people, interested in art, but no one accumulated a single point. His words seemed to have hit the hearts of the people standing down there. Even more so, he continued to say that if they were sent to hell, they would all immediately be turned into pigs or dogs. Don't people know about this? His words seemed to be attacking them, but they didn't have the slightest expression. I see everyone so sad and regretful. Continue, don't think it's someone else's problem. Because that's how everyone will look tomorrow. They don't know what else to say now. Everyone knows what he said is true, but they still want to deny it. The first person intended to say something more, but in the end remained silent. Jean suddenly turned and asked, Jang Tizian. But why are you so angry? Hearing that, he turned around quite surprised when she called his name. She used her most charming face to ask him, I should be busy with the club renovations lately. Because my precious accumulated points are decreasing rapidly. When he heard that, he was quite worried. How did she know about these things about him? How to repair them? He asked. She happily answered, tomorrow is opening day, but there was no spirit at all, any. He saw her asking like that, but it was expensive to ask another question. Sister, I don't know if you want to work more. She was quite confused when he asked this question. It's obvious that you already have a job, so why do you need to do it more? But she still took the risk to learn a little and do more. He saw that she had good intentions. So he turned to her and said, let's work with these people to do more for you. Now my husband is very scheming. As expected, he already had a plan in mind. She was very surprised when she heard that. But everyone there is willing, please do so, I will help with all my heart, just give me food to eat, moreover, I will be wholeheartedly loyal. It is truly the power of the next beauty is that no one can escape from the sky's net. Hearing that, she understood his plan and smiled lightly. She turned, looked at the fans and laughed, then let's try it. The whole arena echoed with laughter. The boring party was about to give birth. Everyone was filled with joy. 2 pairs of lights are turned on. The light shines down on the stage. Everyone was quiet, only now did Jang Tyson and Jean come up. They looked around, saw that the lights and atmosphere of the party were beyond imagination. They exclaimed, it was so beautiful, the sounds of yes were endless. He looked around and said very satisfied, the furniture cost was not a problem. Hearing that, she agreed, yes, she spent some money to hire a dwarf to work. He was so panicked, what, you, a dwarf? She saw his reaction and laughed. Perhaps he had never heard of a dwarf. He thought, oh my god, it's that dwarf. Moreover, the dwarfs are not gods in the afterlife, yet she can invite those people to work. She's really not the type of ordinary girl. He didn't know what else to say. There were also dwarfs, the competition was really fierce. She was very pleased to say. Yes, if the technology is poor, it would be difficult to live here. After chatting with him, she turned around to attract the attention of everyone standing in the auditorium. Come on, everyone's attention. He said very confidently, because everyone present here is called musical geniuses, I will recommend suitable jobs for everyone. Beethoven immediately had an opinion. Young man, what are you talking about? Please explain it to everyone clearly, as expected. Until now you still haven't told them what they need to do. You meet the need right away. First, sell everyone's useless talents to me at a cheap price. Things that are outdated usually no one buys. She was startled when she heard him say that. Really, it's too touching to people. However, he didn't feel anything. His eyes still looked determined. From now on please look carefully. Having finished speaking, he turned and hugged Sister Jin's waist. While she was extremely confused with his sudden action, he was unusually calm. I will dance to the music with her, he said. His words left everyone below speechless. God. Her face was already red. It was rare for him to be willing to express his feelings to someone like that, but his voice was still normal, and everyone should follow their feelings. He happily requested it, then composed the music. Hearing that request, everyone was quite nervous. They must be very lucky to see the goddess and their hearts dancing under the lights in such a sexy outfit. Of course, with such a situation, hey, who would dare to openly disagree? Beethoven stammered and asked, what is this? He saw that everyone was still a bit awkward, so he turned to ask Jean, sister. She has now adapted to the current situation, so she winked at him. I'm waiting, little brother. Her voice is really attractive, making even a schemer like young Tyson unconsciously fall in the grid. The music has turned on, the lights are also bright. Now, this moment is the stage of young Tyson and Sister Jean. The two of them will be the hosts of the party, leading the musicians down there to the pinnacle of their careers. He said loudly, let's begin. During that time, outside everything was still happening very normally. The atmosphere was even somewhat quiet. No one knew that inside the other building was a stand with many musicians playing very loudly, engrossed. Yuri looked at the phone boredly. What happened? I told you we were having lunch together. She walked back and forth, finally leaning against the wall and saying, why don't you go to class? Why skip class? She thought about young Tyson. It's already lunchtime, but suddenly she heard music somewhere, probably coming from that house. She found it quite confusing. Huh? Violin. The weather was still chilly, but outside, she looked up at that building. This was definitely not her target, because not only her but many people also heard the sound of the piano, so out of curiosity, she went over. Everyone outside was talking enthusiastically. I'm dying, this music university student, how can he make such a sweet violin sound? I'm getting goosebumps. She heard everyone talking to her. Just like that, they also ran over. She was also very excited to know the owner of the sound. In front of the two people talking to each other, the first person exclaimed, but this is the first time I've heard this song. The person next to me nodded repeatedly, it's so good. She was extremely shocked. The sound of the violin sounded like it was coming from afar. Moreover, it was not a cabinet but a solo. She seemed to think of something. In here, young Tyson is very happily placing the guitar on his shoulder and playing in his own style. The music sounds very sweet. He smiled so brightly, the guitar seemed to be cooperating with him to create a classic work of art. She walked into the crowd and was surprised to see young Tyson standing there. She shouted in surprise, what is that, young Tyson? Her eyes were tight. Maybe she didn't expect that the person everyone was admiring was young Tyson. She thought in her head, after all, you. What is it, the manier? His silhouette shines in the sunlight like the chosen one. Everyone was crazy about the melodies he created. Everyone seemed to lose their minds and screamed, great, so good. Everyone's face turned red. He stood in the middle of the stage, enjoying the moment. He was praised by the whole world. A while later, after the performance ended, young Tyson came out to meet Yuri. He very gently asked if he was hungry. She was quite happy when he paid attention to her. But as a girl, of course she had to keep the price for herself, so she pretended to be angry. What, skipping class? So what was this violin recital about? He got into the car, carefully put the money he earned in a private place, feeling a bit worried. He didn't know, after the contract with the gods ended, the following days would definitely be like this. From the depths of my heart, all the thoughts of the gods surged forth strongly. She saw that he didn't care about what she said, so she continued to scold him. The same with the piano. When did he perform the violin like that? Are you really human? Of course these words of hers made him angry. I've met a lot of people, so I don't have time to answer in detail. Moreover, this is also my own secret. He didn't say much, just laughed it off. There are many multi-talented people in this world. His words didn't sound very trustworthy, but of course this was the most reasonable answer. She shook her head and said to him again, does that sound reasonable to you? You also know that just having a little artistic talent is already great. You don't, but you have the ability to participate in major piano competitions, now the violin too, she said as if praising him. Then she got angry with him when he was the one who should be angry with himself. Besides those things, do you have any other talents? Tell me, is that still true? She said like this has hit my heart again? Suddenly he changed the subject. Let's go to the school cafeteria today. I was very surprised. Why is it cafeteria? What's wrong? I was planning to use that money to build a hot building. She kept thinking to me, with the money I just earned, they should go eat somewhere fancy. But his answer surprised her. I will donate that money. She couldn't understand what he heard, donating. This was the first time she realized he also had something in his heart. That's kind. He asked her to go somewhere. Let's go first. So the two of them went together to the school cafeteria under the attention of those around them. The two walked side by side, not saying a word. He smiled. She was quite nervous. What are you thinking? Feeling like something unexpected will happen soon. He turned around and smiled brightly. Everything was very good, this time with Yori. She thought that next he would confess his love to her. Her face turned red and she said, "That's so cheesy, you talk like a senior, not more like an uncle." He thought, he was right and he was right, while her face was still red. Maybe she really wanted something to happen. While the two were passionately talking to each other, a voice rang out and interrupted the conversation. "Hey Jang Tyson, I'm very surprised and a little dissatisfied. Why is suddenly bothering me during this time?" He turned down and saw his three friends, 2 men and 1 woman, 2 boys walking in front happily greeted him. Damn Jang Tyson, where did you go today? He wasn't surprised by his appearance, appeared of the 2 people but was surprised by the appearance of the girl in the back. He was shocked by the people who studied with men at law school. If they found out about him now, it would be really bad. Then he realized the person behind him was Senior Yeren. Tyson turned his head in surprise. Ah. Son Yori next to him was equally surprised. 2 boys walked towards them. One of them said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" The son also asked, "Are you on your way to lunch?" The 2 of them continued to greet each other. I said hello to Senior Yori. The 2 also returned the greeting. Ah, that's right, hello Junsik. The girl accompanying the 2 boys suddenly asked him, "Tyson, why didn't you come to the lecture hall today? It's so difficult to see your face." He smirked in response. Does Yeren Sr. have to know the reason? His words startled her. Tyson. The other 2 friends spoke up to reconcile. Thinking back, it seemed like Tyson didn't come to the lecture hall. Didn't he register for some specialized courses? He laughed, but I said before that I wouldn't study specialized subjects this term. Son Yori next to him looked at him and then looked at Yeren and thought, Queen of the Law Department Lee Yeren. Lee Yeren, the most beautiful person in a Korean university, is dating Oh Dong-seom, a promiscuous person. This is a stain that Lee Yeren cannot erase for the rest of her life. Could it be that Lee Yeren is planning to use Tyson to bleach herself? The other friend spoke up and asked him again, interrupting Yori's thoughts. Tyson, will you come to the opening ceremony tomorrow? He smiled brightly. Of course we have to go. Junsik, please text me the location. After saying that, he and Yori turned around and said goodbye to the others and left. The 2 friends also said goodbye. Okay, see you tomorrow, everyone, please eat well. Lee Yeren stood behind with a dark face, looking at the 2 people leaving. Thinking uncomfortably, see and Yori, child X, from the beginning I didn't like it. And Jang Tyson, you will have to kneel at my feet. Now, I have no regrets for you anymore. The scene changes to the classroom. Everyone is talking about someone. What, is that person in our class? Oh my god, is that the violin player from before? I'm a law student. He knows how to play both piano and violin. His nose is straighter than mine. Turns out all the talk was about Tyson. He still smiled and calmly accepted all the comments around him. But, he's so handsome. Suddenly 2 female classmates approached and started talking to him. Hey, are you really law students? He thought to himself, he knew it already, so why did he ask? However, he still politely smiled. Yes, I am a student of course 8 of the law faculty. The 2 girls were excited. 8-star course, wow, our juniors are here. Gradually, many people came up to talk to him, complimenting him continuously. Among the law students I have ever met, he is the best, good at anything. The violin piece you played this morning seems to be an unpublished piece. Surely your teacher is very good. Can you play it again? At this moment, Tyson really didn't know what to do amid the sea of praise from everyone around him. He smiled and replied, yes, it is a piece of music that has never been published. Other classmates asked each other, so what, who composed it? Did your teacher compose it? What conservatory did you study at? If not, then your parents must be people in the music world. He smiled and admitted, it was all my work, I am the one who composed them. This admission made everyone angry. You composed it yourself, the sky is so great. Don't be rude. Not only is he good at playing the violin, he can also compose music. He spoke again. If everyone is wondering, let me prove it to everyone. The classmates were surprised. Why? I want to hear that and play a song, so don't play the violin anymore. Can you play the piano? Don't get up and go to the piano in the classroom, then, I'll play a short piece. He placed his hand on the piano keys, and someone loudly asked below, what was the name of this song? His eyes were thoughtful. What was his name? Then suddenly he smiled. First of all, everyone just listened to it. Every musical note resonates under his skilled hands. The music became faster and faster, his fingers dancing faster and faster along the keys. The sound of the piano echoed outside the classroom. Other students heard it and were surprised. What is it, this piano sound? The students present in the schoolyard who heard it all exclaimed, "Wow, the atmosphere is so wonderful, the professor is playing the stars." Some people even exclaimed, "We have to go see who it is." During this time, the music gave everyone a strange feeling like falling straight from heaven to hell. The lyrics resonate, the feeling of waking up and suddenly finding yourself in a strange place. Where should we go? The students in the class all began to shed tears. Why did we come here anyway? What should we do later? Tyson's fingers continued to dance on the keys. For a moment we become wanderers with nothing, and immerse yourself in fantasy. Tyson was still focused on his music, seemingly not paying any attention to the things around him. The listeners who sat and listened all shed tears along with the song's melody. A few people expressed exclamation, excitement, and sadness. Among the people listening to the music was a man looking at Tyson with an expression as if he was shocked by something. He thought, Chopin. Just like Chopin. Only Chopin can create such wonderful notes. The audience sat there with tears streaming down their faces, feeling so moved. The music gradually ended, the female students burst into tears, some shouted, this is no longer a normal song, I want to hear it again, this is the Sonata of Heaven. Heaven is sad, yes, it is a tragic paradise. Tyson stood there looking down at his listeners with narrowed eyes and a smile, a sad paradise. Originally the name of this piece of music was Untitled Song number 77. At this time, at the back of the room, the professor from before asked a few students. Who was that student? A student from our department. The students who were asked turned around in surprise. Ah, teacher, professor. Not a student of our department. The professor was startled. So, who is it? The other student answered, he was a new student of course 8 of the law faculty. The professor was shocked. What, a new law student? At this time, Tyson walked up to the professor and politely said, Professor, I'm sorry for arbitrarily using the piano before class. He turned to look at him, and from him the professor saw the image of the musical genius Chopin. He was startled and exclaimed, Chopin. Looking at the professor's reaction like that, Tyson smiled shyly. It seemed like he was tricked by Chopin. Just doing that made everyone applaud non-stop. I didn't think so. When I play the piano, it's me but not me. There was clearly something very different, like Chopin had entered my body. Suddenly a message appeared in his mind. Half of the karma points were spent on the gods. At this moment he walked in the schoolyard, thinking as he walked, why is it divided in two? This is not a new type of voice scam. If you show your talent, I will also receive points. Then suddenly he smiled to himself and mumbled, Chopin, from now on, if you continue to casually enter me like that, it's not okay. Do you hear me clearly? At that moment, his phone suddenly vibrated. He opened his phone and looked at the notification and was startled. What? It seemed like it was about to rain, so the opening location changed from the grass field to the 103-star classroom. According to my prediction, it's probably drinking beer with cakes. On days with weather like this, eating onion cakes and drinking rice wine is the best. While he walked away lost in his own thoughts, the other students were looking at him and exclaiming, oh my god, so handsome, is that person, the one playing the piano from earlier? The scene changed to another teaching building. A scolding sound rang out, hey, this kid can't even do just that. The boy who was scolded was shaking his head and stammering, I'm sorry. Teaching assistant. The teacher continued to scold. The professors were also going to attend the opening ceremony but changed the location from the field to the classroom. Even if they are new students, they should have some understanding of the world. Is this okay? Are you planning to live foolishly in this society forever? Do you know that daunting makes these things much better than you, huh? Then he pointed to the person standing next to him and scolded him, and he did the same thing. The student council president has to keep an eye on the new students too. The student who was scolded spoke up tremblingly, I tried everything but couldn't find a more suitable location. There were too many people registered to attend the opening ceremony. The teacher did not accept the explanation and scolded him even louder. I appointed you to be the faculty representative for a reason. Making the impossible possible is something that faculty representatives must do, understand? Especially in the law department, we have never had to experience such a shameful disaster till to now we have, thanks to you. His expression at this moment seemed like he wanted to chew both of their heads off. At this moment, another shouting voice interrupted him, really, that was too much. That teacher immediately got mad, UX. The lecturer was standing and scolding his two students when he heard footsteps coming along with a voice saying, that's too much. The three of them turned around to look in surprise. The lecturer heard someone say that and angrily asked, who are you? It seemed like the teacher realized who this student was. The teacher's face also became panicked. No, it was you. That young man walked closer to the other three people. It seems the teacher recognized them. That young man showed a sinister smile and introduced himself to everyone, the righteous man of the 8th class of law faculty, Jang Tae-san. Hearing this name, the three of them couldn't help but be surprised. Everyone's eyes widened and looked suspiciously at the young man, Jang Tae-san. The teacher suddenly became worried, his face turned pale, his body trembled with fear and asked, what the hell are you talking about? Jang Tae-san didn't pay any attention. calmly sarcastically said, "You're talking too much." When the teacher heard the student retorting his words, he got angry and yelled and cursed to Jang Tae-san. How dare the new student retort the teaching assistant's words, this damn crazy guy. Jang Tae-san heard his teacher curse him like that, and the thought immediately appeared in his heart, the crazy person is the teacher. Not me. Jang Tae-san looked down with a self-deprecating smile. Damn it, the teacher was angry and shouted, "Yes, you bastard." Having said that, Jang Tae-san said right in the middle of many students walking around, after all, he is a teaching assistant, he has no right to call students bastards. The teacher couldn't believe his ears. What? His face looked careless, looking straight at the teacher with unfriendly eyes. Please apologize and take back that statement. Jang Tae-san continued to say, especially when we're the ones who will later become part of the legal community that carries out justice and justice in Korea. The teaching assistant humiliating me is no different from insulting the entire student body. The more the teacher listened, the angrier he became, gritting his teeth and cursing, "You damn kid, you're so brave." Seeing the teacher angry did not make Jang Tae-san worried, on the contrary, he looked at the teacher with eyes full of confidence. There were more and more students standing and listening. The words Jang Tae-san had just said also made them curious. He continued to say, "Didn't the teacher just tell the dean that first-year students are also adults? Don't just talk, take action." When the students heard this, everyone was surprised. They looked towards Jang Tae-san to hear him continue. "Are adults cursing like this? I did not enter the law department of a Korean university to hear such words." The two students who were scolded by the teacher just now also spoke up. "That's right, the teaching assistant scolded him like that was wrong." The teacher got mad and immediately turned around and shouted at the other two students. "What? Hey, are you crazy? Can't you see that guy is resisting me?" These two students pretended to be stupid and said, "Probably so, but there was no teacher at all." "That's right," the teacher shouted. "Hey, you hackball." Jang Tae-san stopped being next to him and couldn't hear it anymore, so he spoke up, "Please apologize, but there is no way this teacher would apologize to the students." He shouted, "Crazy, they couldn't even discuss the location, so why should I apologize? No sorry." As if he understood the point of the sentence, Jang Tae-san asked back, "So if we discuss the location, will you apologize?" The teacher heard that and stood still for 5 seconds, staring at the student standing in front of him. What? But it seems like the teacher has thought of something. Smiling evilly and thinking, discussing, "Jang Tae-san, you." The teacher immediately became happy. Smiled and raised his finger to say very confidently, giving Jang Tae-san a challenge. "Okay, within an hour if he can discuss the opening location, making the professors happy, I will publicly apologize." The more he talked, the more dangerous his face became. Refer to the first-year business school students opening today in Pal 10. Hearing about the opening location, the two students who had just been scolded by the teacher were now gasping in surprise, their eyes wide open as if they couldn't believe this was true. Hearing the teacher say that, Jang Tae-san did not hesitate any longer and took out his phone and dialed a number to call someone. Jang Tae-san leisurely picked up the phone and said, "Do you need an hour? I'll discuss it right now." The teacher saw this scene and thought contemptuously in his heart, "This bastard thinks Pal 10 Hotel is the name of someone's dog." The other teacher stood next to him, smiling happily. The more he thought about it, the more interested he became. "Let's see Jang Tae-san, let's see what tricks he plays." Jang Tae-san's phone connected to the other party. A voice came from the phone. "Thank you for contacting. I'm Chang Soo, the representative in charge of the conference room at Pal 10 Hotel." Jang Tae-san slowly replied, "Hello, can you help me with something?" The other side of the Pal 10 Hotel very thoughtfully responded, "Of course, sir, how can I help you?" Hearing that, Jang Tae-san's eyes flashed with joy. He smiled and said, "I need a venue for the opening ceremony. Can I rent a hall in Pal 10 Hotel?" The teacher heard the conversation just now and was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. The other side of the phone continued, "How are you today, sir?" Jang Tae-san replied, "Yes." After another hour there were about 100 people, including the professor. The people standing around heard this conversation. Everyone gasped in surprise. They all did not believe this was true. The Pal 10 Hotel hall, impossible. The hotel side responded immediately, "Yes sir, please rest assured, I will find it right away." To the surprise of everyone here, Jang Tae-san made a request to the other hotel. "I wanted to ask Chef Albert Leo, who cooked the dishes I had eaten before. Please take about 3 buses to the parking lot of the Korean University Law Faculty." The hotel happily responded, "Yes, I will arrange it right away, then see you in an hour." The more people around heard, the more surprised they became. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. The chef, the 3 buses. Everyone was stunned for a few seconds. At the end of the phone call, the teacher who had been standing there watching the drama could not believe that this was true. He was angry and trembling and said, "Lying is impossible." Jang Tae-san didn't care either. He smiled and said friendly, "So let's talk to the representative." After finishing his sentence, he immediately changed his face, turned his bullet-shaped eyes towards the teacher and said, "I'll say it again, please apologize." The teacher did not believe this was true. He shouted angrily, "Shut up, who are you fooling?" After hearing this, Jang Tae-san's face suddenly darkened and he coldly repeated the teacher's last words, "Shut up." He used a suppressed voice and said, "I'm giving you a final warning." The teacher seemed to detect the danger emanating from Jang Tae-san's body and sweat suddenly poured out. Something. Suddenly, Jang Tae-san turned into another person. Using his internal strength, anger appeared. He stretched out his neck and shouted at the teacher and teaching assistant, "No need." The teacher feels scared and screams, "Ah." Jang Tae-san's face became even more fierce, his deadly eyes aimed at the teacher in front of him. Blue veins appeared on his face, saying a warning, apologizing, "If you don't want to die." The teacher who witnessed this scene was not cold but shivered, jumped back a few steps. Sweat poured out like rain, his mouth kept saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I will speak carefully." After saying that, he was so scared that he turned around and ran towards the door. The surrounding students stood and laughed. "Ha, that senior ran away, ha ha ha." The teacher ran to the door and remembered the terrifying appearance of Jang Tae-san just now. He couldn't help but turn around in fear. What the hell was that monster appearance just now? The two students who were initially scolded by the teacher now felt relieved. Looked at Jang Tae-san and smiled shyly and said, "Tae-san, thank you." Jang Tae-san humbly replied, "Just helping friends in trouble." Hearing these words, they were moved to tears. They didn't think that anyone would come forward to help them like that. They couldn't help but feel grateful. Tae-san. The people around all witnessed what happened just now. They kept praising Jang Tae-san. "So cool, so refreshing. Tae-san is at the top. This causes his career points to be increased." Scene changed to Palton Hotel. In front of the hotel door, noisy conversations rang out. "What, the law faculty is coming too?" "Yes, I just saw you getting off the bus to the auditorium, really." The more these students talked, the more enthusiastic they became, and saw a food cart following them. The chef also has foreign chefs coming. Without Oh Dong-song, who would help, the chef participating would cost at least 100,000 won per person. A girl who had always kept silent until now, a thought appeared in her mind. She had to go directly to verify it. In the hotel lobby, people were busy coming and going. The discussions still haven't ended. "That guy is so cool, he didn't even invite a girl group." The food was served on the table in abundance, from European to Korean dishes, making the students even more curious. Within an hour, the hotel hall was rented, and high-class dishes such as like this anymore. In the large hotel hall, such noisy conversations continued. It was said that his family was very rich. "I heard that my grandmother's family is a tycoon." Everyone stood around chatting. "Tae-san, that guy didn't know who he was, but he was probably of some caliber. That guy is really good." This girl listened attentively to those gossips, as if she discovered something very interesting. "Is Jang Tae-san really you?" The girl suddenly smiled with satisfaction. Thinking, "Good job, Jang Tae-san, I've marked you." In a tall corporate building, a voice came from the office. "Lawyer Joe, how is the investigation of the Financial Surveillance Service going?" Lawyer Joe seriously reported, "All were stopped." Lawyer Joe gave a friendly smile and continued. Since it was a legal situation, he should use a little force, but that side would keep his mouth shut. They are really sharp-eyed. Jang Tae-san overhears contemplating something and asked, "Do you know who is managing the business?" Lawyer Joe was a bit surprised and asked again. "Business manager, what's wrong? Do you seriously want to take over the business?" Jang Tae-san replied with a calculating face, "Yes, I think I will do it soon." Lawyer Joe, with 10,000 questions why, kept asking Jang Tae-san, no matter what size. "Small and medium enterprise, do I know?" Jang Tae-san smiled and replied, "Probably so." This answer made Lawyer Joe feel more secure. He said, "Okay, then I can go out for a few drinks with my friends." If it was current capital, it probably wouldn't have been difficult to buy a business. After finishing his sentence, Jang Tae-san immediately added, his eyes flashing with confidence, saying, "It's a corporation." Lawyer Joe didn't pay much attention at first, just nodded and smiled. "Okay, good, corporation." As if something flashed in his mind, he opened his eyes wide and looked at Jang Tae-san, as if he heard something terrible. "What, a corporation?" He looked at the chairman in front of him suspiciously and asked a question. "Could it be Dong Ryong?" Jang Tae-san looked straight and Lawyer Joe said, "Wow, Dong Ryong Group is a bit small, you should think about it more." Lawyer Joe's eyes froze, his face also became more unsightly. It seemed like he had thought of an answer, so, maybe. Jang Tae-san looked at him like that and guessed that he already knew. Yes, it seemed right. Lawyer Joe didn't think this was right. He grimaced and shouted, "Tae-san is not him, it can't be." No matter how surprised Lawyer Joe seemed, he still maintained a calm state and said, "I plan to buy back Anna Group." Even though Lawyer Joe had predicted it, when he heard the director say that, he couldn't help but panic. "Director Jang, we shouldn't touch them." He was trying to explain to Jang Tae-san the seriousness of the problem. With the advent of this government, the director knows how much money Anna Group has spent. The more he spoke, the more worried he became. His face filled with fear and said, "Anna's president will probably kill you." Lawyer Joe was afraid for his director. The more he spoke, the more his voice trembled. Tae-san could lose his life this time, but Jang Tae-san seemed to have his own plans. Not paying too much attention to those things and saying, "Huh, don't worry. Speaking of this, in Lawyer Joe's mind, the cruel face of Chairman O appeared, a face full of death. He warned Jiang Tae-san, Chairman Jiang, that bastard is extremely despicable. He waved his arms and legs, wanting to transfer your interest to another company. If you choose Dong Ryong Group, I will try. Dong Ryong is good, you can give it to your mother. But Jiang Tae-san ignored it. He acted like it was a normal thing to laugh and talk. Snacks can't become a main dish, right? Lawyer Joe couldn't believe these words. What did you say? He asked his director in doubt. Dong Ryong is a snack. Anna is a main dish, Jiang Tae-san replied indifferently, probably so. Scene changed to another conversation. He gently put down his cup of coffee. The coffee was still hot and smoke was flying. It seemed like this meeting had just begun. Jiang Tae-san looked at the beautiful girl in front of him, smiled friendly and said, "Thank you for the coffee today, department head you." When you heard that, he smiled beautifully and replied, "That's what I should do." Suddenly, the phone on the table rang and rang. It was Jiang Tae-san's phone. He picked up the phone and called his mother. At the other end of the second was a woman's voice. "Are you busy, son?" Jiang Tae-san answered his mother's phone call and gently replied, "Not busy, what's going on?" His mother immediately replied, "What's going on? She just called to know if you went to school well or not." He and mom continued their conversation. He said, "Well, if you want to know, come play with me this weekend." His mother on the other end of the phone heard that and smiled and replied, I'm sorry but this time it's not your turn to visit me." He heard his mother say that and was a little surprised and asked, how are you? What's going on at home? His mother knew he was thinking in the wrong direction, so she said, "There is no problem with the house, the problem lies with the child." When I heard my mother say it, I didn't understand anything. What was wrong with my child? His mother slowly replied, "Son, I have my health certificate." Hearing this, he was startled. His mouth gaped open, his eyes opened wide as if something terrible had happened, and he shouted, a health check." His mother heard his voice and seemed to have predicted it. No matter how he reacted, his mother continued to say, "You forgot. No, you forgot on purpose." Right, these words made him freeze. How can I forget things? Even if I regress, the memories of my time in the army still terrify me. In his mind, memories of the past reappeared. In a place with all kinds of people, a place like a dream garden of a strange country where the good, the ugly, the weird, the strange gathered together, these images kept appearing in his mind as if they had just happened. Manager Yu was sitting next to her, so she heard this conversation. She curiously asked, "Director, why do you have to do a health check?" This question brought him back to the present, startled when he looked at Department Head Yu and thought, "Oh, I forgot, Department Head Yu was right in front of him." At this time, he was a bit shy because of his recent behavior, so he smiled shyly and said, "My mother said she already had a health check." Manager Yu heard that and didn't think much of it. He innocently asked, Health check, the director must have been ranked first." Jiang Taishan looked at the girl in front of him who was still smiling and talking as if there was no problem, wondering in his heart, "Oh, why did she react like that?" Chief Yu smiled and continued, just looking at him. I could see that he was very compatible with Marines or Special Forces soldiers. Jiang Taishan's face was stunned and he said, "Chief Yu, could it be?" Looking at his face like that, she just smiled and said, "You asked me how I knew your age." Hearing the question, Jiang Taishan was stunned. Looking at him like that, Manager Yu smiled happily and continued, it seems the director still doesn't know much about women. If you're interested, women collect just as much information as men." After hearing this, Jiang Taishan's face was bewildered and he couldn't utter a word. Seeing that he didn't answer, she guessed that what she just said was true. She smiled brightly and continued, "I think I've said it before, it's not men who flirt with women, but women who signal to men first." I was very skeptical. He just asked to book plane tickets or hotels in advance and always paid directly, even for snacks or pizza costs up to millions of won per month. Jiang Taishan just sat and listened to her talk like that, not knowing what he was thinking. She smiled and continued to get to the point. Just going to work or on vacation is strange enough. He felt like he had been stabbed in the heart, smiling foolishly, thinking it was all the mistakes he had caused. She continued, "And he even studied at a Korean law university." Hearing that, he guessed that there seemed to be no problem. He gently picked up the cup of coffee to drink to regain composure and thought, yes, that much information is not enough to be sure, Manager Yu turned his clear eyes towards him and said, "So I searched, I knew roughly the area where he lived, so I looked for the high school, the pride of Jiangsu High School, past the law faculty of the National University." He was drinking coffee. Hearing her say that startled him so much that he choked on the coffee. Coffee flew out of his nose and his face changed color. His eyes accidentally fell on the part below her neck. This was probably what made him choke on his coffee, not those words. She didn't pay attention and continued, "Are you afraid you'll be looked down upon because you're young?" He stammered in response, "No, that's not it." She continued, "You don't know how girls calculate." Right, hearing that, he was startled and looked straight into her face and replied, "Yes." Her voice continued to echo, "There is no company like this company in Korea. Even if the director is a middle school student, I will still stay at the company. What does age have to do with it?" He smiled awkwardly, not knowing how to say it properly. Naively said, I thought Captain you would sympathize with me. Truong Fan Yu also smiled brightly and said sincerely, the director is also a good person. I will devote myself to the company, he thought to himself, giving his all. She turned back and looked straight into the director's eyes and continued. Even if the director goes on duty, I will not betray the director, not only will I send letters, but every month I will visit. I'll tell them not to bully you because they're older. Hearing that, he looked at her confused and thought, oh, why does it look like I'm going to join the army? He smiled and said, no need to visit. She was startled when she heard that. She didn't understand why he said that, huh? She panicked and said in worry, Director. Did I do something wrong? What did I do wrong? She looked at him with pitiful eyes and carefully asked, do you hate me? He saw her with such an attitude and helplessly said, no, me? I have no intention of joining the army. His face became full of confidence, his eyes also revealed a steadfast look towards her. When she heard his answer, she was surprised and exclaimed, huh? The scene changes to a large company building. A conversation comes from the top room of the company. Boss, that bastard seems to have returned to his hometown. He left home early in the morning and was on a high-speed train. This big brother sits cross-legged on the desk. He is truly a different big brother. The other end of the line is waiting for an order from this boss. What should I do now? The big brother spoke, revealing his white teeth, but did not seem very friendly, saying, where are the people in the security company? On the other side, his junior replied, I'm going alone. Sitting against the light, the big brother's face darkened, making him look even more scary. His voice was equally scary, so, follow him, I'll send them away right away. When juniors receive orders, they speak and obey big brother's orders. He hung up the phone and thought, Jung Tyson, that strange bastard, this kid is really good at taking down businesses, studied all the way to Korean Law University. Suddenly he revealed his straight face, sharp eyes and a cunning smile and said, your luck is over, it's okay to bury you in your hometown. The car sped along the road. The scenery here was so familiar to Jung Tyson, joy aroused in his heart, his homeland. The red car kept rushing forward, finally arriving at Jeongju City. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind of a young man with white hair screaming in pain, with a few drops of blood appearing around him. Each imagery appeared in his mind. There was death, blood, images of slaughter that he still couldn't forget. Then a man's face was covered in blood, his eyes were cruel, his face was injured but still showed a cruel look in it. He got out of his car, looked at the familiar scene in front of him and couldn't help but think. Missing the atmosphere of his hometown so much. Returning to the place where he was born. Jung Tyson exuded a comfort that he did not have in the city. The more he looked at this scene, the more he remembered his old friends. He returned to Jeongju City to receive a health check. While standing there admiring the surrounding scenery, something suddenly came at him, making him scream in pain, ah. Suddenly, a voice rang out, making him stunned. His face stiffened. If the gods hadn't suddenly called, there would be nothing better. It turned out that he was standing in front of a temple. This place seemed very beautiful. He thought, who is this god again? The scene of the temple appearing before your eyes is so beautiful, it has a peaceful feeling different from the urban place out there. A man walked out from inside and faced Jung Tyson and asked, are you here? He looked at the person in front of him but was not surprised at all. He smiled and thought, Mr. Barnsdale, anyone who looks at me knows you were looking for me. Mr. Barnsdale gave a friendly smile and asked, how are you? Jung Tyson saw that and smiled and asked, what's going on? He looked so happy. Mr. Barnsdale smiled happily and asked, do you feel the same way? How could Jung Tyson not know? Happiness appeared on his face. He said, yes, it seems like you are very happy. Mr. Barnsdale adjusted his glasses and replied gently, you have good eyesight. Jung Tyson seemed to have discovered something. He looked at Mr. Barnsdale in front of him and said, the way he spoke had also changed. Did something happen? Tyson crossed his arms in front of his chest and asked with a serious face, it's amazing how you accumulated so many points. Barnsdale looked mysterious and said, have you ever heard of the Lake of the Gods? Tyson suddenly remembered, the legendary lake where Mr. Nova pulled the Elf Queen up, and Ms. Jeannie also said she worked there, is a very different place. Barnsdale wisely smiled and said, one day I went to the gods area and used the points you gave me to buy the lake entrance fee. Tyson looked at him and jokingly said, Lake of the Gods is like a famous amusement park. Barnsdale replied shyly, I only went there for the first time, because I lost too many points so I couldn't go there anymore. But it's great, the lake water is very different. Oh, the lake water. Tyson looked at Barnsdale in amazement. Barnsdale laughed loudly then replied, deal is smooth. He fell backwards with his answer. You mean that country, not that country. Tyson said coldly, then why did you suddenly mention that place? Barnsdale looked intently at Tyson's expression, that's right. I took tutoring lessons there. What are you talking about in remedial mechanics? No need to be so surprised, Barnsdale, haven't I told you? Hearing that, his eyes sparkled with surprise, huh? Barnsdale still kept his smile and replied, ancient language. Tyson thought to himself, ancient language. Haha, that's right, I learned the ancient language there. Tyson thought in fear, could that be a magical language that appears in fictional novels? Barnsdale continued to say, instead I also taught them some of the languages I know. Tyson asked curiously. Do the gods also need to learn that language? Of course, the gods with high status do not say that anybody with lower status must learn to go to another dimension to do that task. After listening, Tyson understood some parts, so that's it. Barnsdale stood opposite Tyson and explained more, and now there are many gods from that dimension passing through here for part-time jobs, you know, witches, goblins, magicians, etc. Tyson is unbelievable, oh my god, yes I know. So I taught them the language of this dimension. He heard Barnsdale say that and only nonchalantly replied, oh really? Barnsdale suddenly rushed closer to Tyson and said, just telling him that they have a lot of karma points. Especially the female goblins are so delicious, their scores are even better. Tyson's face was full of anticipation for the smooth goblin girls. Tyson thought to himself, it turns out he also met a goblin, although not at the queen level like Nova. He's suddenly very jealous of Barnsdale. I also have Nova's training documents with me. But I also want to contact him, with those goblins. Barnsdale chuckled and looked at him. He was surprised that it was such a pleasure to be a god here. Tyson replied, I really admire you. Tyson raised the like button towards Barnsdale, that's great, you must have earned a lot of points. Barnsdale knew his intentions so he said it first, but you can't go. Tyson got mad and shouted, oh, I also want to go there. Barnsdale rejected him because he is not yet a god. Why am I not a god? What do you say? Tyson replied unhappily. Barnsdale didn't care what he said, you can't go there like that. Tyson frowned and said. Only the body is in the human world, but I also said that we specialize in dealing with gods. Barnsdale was told that his heart was broken and he was helpless to compromise. It's not like there was no way. Hearing that tone, do you want to give me a condition? Thinking like that, Tyson still smiled and said, yes, what should I do? Barnsdale looked at him and said frankly, that was a bit dangerous. Tyson didn't think so. Just learning a language isn't dangerous. He was afraid of revealing a loophole so he changed the topic. It's not like that, you've already earned a lot of karma points. Tyson happily replied, of course, it's just enough. Barnsdale asked worriedly, twice as much as the previous transaction. Tyson did not hesitate to think but agreed, yes. Barnsdale didn't expect him to agree so quickly. Why did he make such a strong decision? I'm in trouble. Tyson rushed straight to Barnsdale and said, smiling, since you suddenly appeared, you've been paying attention to my grades, right? Looking at Tyson's arm around his shoulder, Barnsdale hesitantly said, let's sign the deal then. Tyson was extremely excited, of course I know your ancient language has my points. A god from another dimension has begun to pay attention to you. Tyson was surprised. Wondering why the god from another dimension, remembering Barnsdale's words again, I said it would be dangerous. Tyson saw that and cursed, damn why is that so? Yo man my bro welcome to Zhangzhou City. When my friends saw him coming home, they laughed and talked, my bro, how have you been so much, I miss you so much. Tyson looked at his friends and asked, do you miss me or my wallet? They all rushed to hug Tyson and said, haha of course it's both of them. His other friend observed him and asked, do you think you've grown taller? The guy next to me jokingly said. Hi Anshio, Tyson is different now so we can do well. That's right, Tyson has Syrian and that beautiful sister too. Oh that's right, Claire is right, haha let's go drink together, why did you tell me? The guy in the yellow shirt excitedly told me, I went on a blind date yesterday. The guy in the black shirt got angry and said, why did you go on a blind date, you traitor? The two of them continued to laugh and joke happily. If it's fun, please let me know. The other friend happily agreed. Okay hi Anshio. Tyson helplessly looked at the two of them. They were still the same as before. By this time the sky had turned dark. Tyson's friends went out to drink. Have you called them yet? The yellow shirt boy said, everyone who can come has already arrived. It's been a long time since you came back, so many of you are not home. Tyson smiled and said, it's been a while, let's go play online. A glass of wine hit the table. You bastard Tyson. Why don't you stay awake in this city and play on the internet? Tyson doesn't understand and sits there bewildered, huh? The guy laughed loudly and said, if you play games, go shoot guns and don't change anything to suit the times. The guy next to me also agreed, haha that's right, those of us who are about to go to military service should play shooting. Have you all gone for a health check? Yes, you, yes, me? They started discussing again, let's join the army together, that's it, yes we can join the army together. Okay, you have a good idea. Tyson looked at them and thought, haha crazy people. Tyson suddenly said, I'm sorry, don't count me in the army. I'm cross-eyed. His friends were surprised, they were cross-eyed. Your friends are confused and cross-eyed, why do you have to apologize? Everyone burst out laughing, that's great. I'm jealous too, you're so lucky, I'll also. Pray hard for luck, pray Zhangzhou. Let's go, I'll cover everything, go. At an internet cafe, Tyson sat in front of the computer and said, no matter what I do, I think being 20 is the best. Come on, brothers, let's toast together. Now you guys can play as you please. Tyson generously said. Just eat as much as you want because I'm rich, I'll go to the car and eat for a while. Tyson left them behind, standing alone outside. Tyson coldly glanced behind him and said, guys. You can get out. Following Tyson's call, they stepped out and stood in front of Tyson, holding their weapons in their hands. Tyson coldly glanced at them. I knew you were following me from the moment I parked the car, quickly get out here, you flies. They saw that their plan was exposed, so they had to step out. They just stood there looking at him with hostile eyes, looking at the swords in their hands. He silently exclaimed, the line is long, probably cut to the bone. As soon as he finished speaking, they rushed over like lightning. Tyson said in panic, what kind of killing intent is that? Then he angrily shouted, hey, that's crazy. They didn't say much and raised their swords to kill Tyson. He changed his expression and used his hand to stop them. Those bastards really cut me, so please answer. They didn't dare to act rudely anymore and looked at him in fear. Tyson observed them and saw that something was wrong. Oh, these people don't seem to be from here. Are they Chinese? No, or are they from the Korean tribe? He turned around and twisted one of the guy's arms and threw them away. His whole body radiated a terrifying aura. It seemed like he really wanted to kill me this time. Tyson used his hand to squeeze another guy's face, making him groan in pain. The strength of his hand became stronger and stronger. His cries became louder and louder. Seeing this, his teammates were afraid and did not dare to move forward. The blonde guy whose arm he broke just now silently contemplated. Tyson moves magic. They were very surprised when they saw everything. What was that? It was the Tai Chi, 5 elements, young Henry Tam Dharma. Tyson was very pleased to see their scared expressions. Why was he surprised? It's probably the first time you've met someone like me. The guy in black said through gritted teeth, bastard. Then he ordered the 2 guys behind him to quickly attack. Tyson saw them being so stupid and laughed loudly. It was really funny. The blonde guy was not afraid of death and rushed towards Tyson. Damn it. Tyson glared coldly and said, damn you bastards. Today they will surely die. They shouted loudly, what are they afraid of? Who the hell is that guy? Tyson silently looked at them like they were crazy and wanted to take his life. Blood splattered everywhere. This time the dead were the bastards. 2 of the 3 of them were dead. The black-haired man covered his face in fear. They died very miserably. Blood soaked the ground red. Tyson approached the black-haired man and said contemptuously, why continue fighting? Nothing is over yet, you guys are assassins. Who sent you here? The guy with black hair and his face covered in blood looked at Tyson in fear. Tyson coldly repeated the question again, who sent you guys here when I was still talking properly? Seeing him so silent, he burst out laughing. Haha, can't say anything. He put his face close to me, smirked and said, it's okay, I know everything, so just relax, he said in surprise. Why is that happening? Glancing at his arm, he said, people can still live well even if they only have one arm, right? He was scared by your words, this guy is crazy. Tyson smiled and said, you should rest first. Your friends still have enough limbs. Tyson patted his shoulder and said, don't worry, you will be next. His eyes widened in surprise. Just as you guessed. Not long after you left, there was a call. Wait, I'll say it, I was wrong, please forgive us. Tyson turned his back to him and said, I'm thinking clearly, but what should I do? It's already late. Even if I want to forgive you, the soul following you says this. Break his bones. Peel his skin, avenge us. He looked at his cold eyes and said in panic, what? Thud, blood splashed again and he died instantly. The next morning at the company, Tyson asked, Director, are you still okay? Looks like he's still healthy. Han Jinwing asked in surprise, who are they to dare? Tyson replied solemnly, they are professional assassins. Director Han was extremely panicked after hearing this, assassin. Han Jinwing guessed that by assassins he meant mercenaries. Tyson stood opposite Director Han and said, do you know them too? Jinwing replied, yes, I have heard. Han Jinwing frowned and said, this is an open secret in the security world. If the mercenaries are professionally trained from China, it will be difficult to find their traces. Tyson asked again, are there many of them coming to our country? Han Jinwing replied. There are many people who have faked passports. They are very skilled at kidnapping and killing people. It is said that their organ trafficking network is very systematic. Tyson thought thoughtfully, even though he had predicted some of it, the people who targeted him were cold-blooded. Not just protecting their lives, but this was a family matter. Tyson pointed at the people behind Jinwing and said, is that them? Yes, that's right, today I rushed 10 people over. Director Han pointed to the two girls and said, please introduce to your sisters these are two female tutors. As for the others, please protect them from afar, they clearly shouted and obeyed, please leave this job to us. Tyson said, I will build a new training camp near my father's farm. Please install surveillance equipment including CCTV, no need to save money. I heard that 50 more people will be added, Han Jinwing replied, that's right. Tyson smiled and said, it's okay to increase to 100 people if you have reliable abilities. I'm always welcome, everyone replied in unison, we will obey the director's orders. Tomorrow morning, in the office, the man was almost mad and shouted angrily, what has failed? A bunch of idiots, where are those bastards? Mr. Zhou was currently leading Hao Huanwu into Tyson's office, he said as he walked, our director Zhang is a very good person, don't be nervous, just tell me everything about you. Huanwu immediately said, I know, my friend. And this building is fully used, Mr. Zhou has nothing to hide so he replied, yes it is fully used. Huanwu asked a little surprised, really?